Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thanks for reminding me.
David was definitely gonna do it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
About halfway.
Shall we get started? Okay, our first job is to call to order, which we're doing, and hopefully just a couple of minutes late to accommodate people figuring out how to access Zoom or otherwise get here. It's a little bit snowy evening. First off, before I get started about introduce our new member. Alternate, there we go.
Hi.
I've not met you except for this evening, I don't believe.
No, I don't think so. I don't think I've met anyone here except for tonight. So
Welcome.
thank you.
We've got, let's see, I've got Sarah Kimball and Kathleen Dougherty, Chris McAleer as members attending by Zoom this evening. And I'm not sure about what the protocol is about voting. I think we have to have 4 live bodies here that are voting members. So I have 1, 2, 3 members, which means I think I've got to appoint an alternate as a voting member this evening. So one of you guys is not going to get to vote. Do you want to draw short straws or does somebody not want to vote this evening?
Chris, Kathleen, Sarah is talking to you three.
You guys
Are
on Zoom?
you talking
Oh, it
to,
doesn't matter to me.
are you talking to Zoom members?
Yes.
Okay, I don't have to vote. everybody else can vote. Fine.
Okay.
I'm-
thanks.
I'm staying with Kathleen.
All right, but now you're in. I'm sorry. Kathy already made the choice for you. Sorry.
Speak up for them.
Oh, all right.
So Sarah, you're in, Chris, you're in, and according to the RSA, the most senior, and it's not age, it's seniority by when did you start as an alternate, and you're never gonna go. No. These guys should don't
Okay.
show up sometimes, you know? Nothing that puts you on.
Right.
Okay, so we'll go there. I think we meet our legal requirement for this evening. All right. So we're supposed to do a roll call, but I think I just did that. And we did the current voting member determination. We have to review and approve minutes of the December 8th meeting. You may or may not have copies in front of you. Hopefully you read them beforehand. They were posted on e-news and sent out to all members via email. Do I have a motion to approve? Any second? Did I get a second?
Second.
I have a
I'll
second.
second.
All right, so we have a motion, a second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. That's all good. All right. All right, so we have public tonight, and the next thing on our agenda is public comment on something that's not on the agenda. It's on the agenda, we gotta wait. But if there's something that's a burning issue that's not on the agenda for this evening, this is your chance. Anybody out there on the Zoom? I can't see everybody. I don't know who William is. Anybody? Anybody? Going once, going twice, sold. All right. Most exciting thing is our public hearing for tonight. And so apologize to the folks who were here for the border, the boundary line adjustment, but you're on the agenda second, guys. Sorry. Sorry, Andy. But we have a whole bunch of folks here at the public hearing. Welcome, welcome. If you only saw the audience out there, it's massive.
When they talk, they will.
What?
When they talk, they will.
Oh, okay, good.
All the applause.
All right.
Welcome.
So we made some major adjustments since last we met. Well, last we met, we were at 5 acres, we're down to 1 acre for the solar ordinance. And the intention really is to neither be too liberal or conservative on this. And that is to find some happy balance that meets the community needs and still allows people to use their property to obtain solar power. Major changes since last we sat here were to compress the ordinance into 2 major parts. One is for rooftop mounts. And rooftop mounts really have very little requirement outside of the that which is available currently for the building code. The limitation that's put on how large, I mean, presumably you have a roof that's 100 by 50 or something, that's amazing size roof, you still are going to be limited to only 150% of your need for your home. So, if you start wanting to go crazy about how many panels you want to put up there, you're still limited, and it's the only limit really, I think, relative to the rooftop mounts. I think where the ordinance gets interesting is around ground mounts. And when you take a look at ground mounts, everyone thinks about that solar farm that's going in Georgia, that's going to be 500 acres and generate some 40 megawatts or enough to actually power 4 counties or 5 counties in Georgia, which is amazing. Which is almost larger than the space that Jackson for the footprint. And it's an amazing installation that may occur there. Our intention on the ground mounts is again to limit use for what people need. And the maximum amount of ground mount array that is allowed under the ordinance would be 150% of what your expected need might be. Now, if you ask what is 150% of what? Well, it's a calculation, and it's one that's done based on what your demand is, your electricity demand. And we made some changes up on that to make sure that if you're trying, if say you're building a new house, you don't have a year's experience, you can't say, well, gee, I know exactly what it's going to be, but you can calculate what it's going to be. Or if you're going to buy 3 new Teslas and a new Ford Lightning, whatever it is that you like, and you're also going to put a heat pump in, and oh, by the way, you're going to add another 1,000 square feet while you're at it, and also put a ground mount array in. It can be calculated. The amount can be calculated, and it would be something that Kevin Bennett can actually work through with whomever the installer is going to be and determine what that amount is. And as long as it doesn't exceed 150% of that calculation, you're good to go. The factor that's going to limit most people is the cost of the installation. I've taken a look at this myself as part of this process. It's expensive to do it, and the more things you put into your installation, the more expensive it gets, and the payback starts shrinking the more you put in that you don't need. So it's like, okay, it's an IQ test of sorts. Hopefully we'll all pass that. The other thing we did with the ground mount was to make sure we disincentivize any process that is going to be done. Anybody's got a thought of doing a commercial installation. i.e. putting in a solar array simply to try to sell the power that's gained. One, it's not a really great idea in the Mount Washington Valley, and Jackson particularly, the amount of clouds we have, it's not a great place for a commercial installation anyways. But that doesn't usually dissuade somebody who's just decided they're gonna do it anyways. So if they decide they want to do it anyways, the only installations that can be done that are not specifically associated with an individual household are ones that are community. In other words, somebody's putting one out there that serves more than one household at a time. And that's what community means. Okay, so if you take a look at the solar ordinance and you say, community, the idea around community is that it served more than one household. You can have a single array that serves more than one household. And that's the intention of that. And I think that's about it. Conversation that folks on the board. First, I'll ask for you guys for any input that you might have, but first, people who are here, and comments.
I do have one comment, and that's because, you know, if you get cluster housing, depending on how many houses there are, you've limited it to an acre of land. And depending on the number of houses, could that possibly take up more than an acre of land?
We looked at the square footage,
Yeah.
and it really isn't, you know, I think we felt an acre would be
Oh,
more sufficient. for-
If you have more than 30 houses clustered, yeah.
I guess we wouldn't see that in Jackson.
Well, I mean, you know,
Yeah,
I think that would be an opportunity for the ZBA to come in and say, oh, yeah, they didn't think of that, those idiots. Because we didn't really think 30 households potentially being served in a cluster variety, yeah. And yeah, I mean, that's a real future thing for Jackson. If you could figure out how to do that, we'll figure out how to change it to make it work. How's that?
You want to build 30 houses. Well,
How's that for a deal? I think we would be willing to figure out some way, and that's the other thing is that, you know, when we put out the change to the zoning ordinance, the intention is to put a stake in the sand, and it doesn't mean that it has to stay, that has to be the only thing ever. If things change and this technology changes, it's likely to change. I think we'll have to look at it and see how it works and whether or not what we put together now works 5 years from now, 3 years from now, even if things change. But it's a stake in the sand and the place for us to start. Where we think it's going to meet most people's needs, it's either too restrictive or too liberal. And it shouldn't get in the way of most people's desire to have some kind of solar array in their home. About the only thing that's truly controversial, I think, in the whole thing is that we're asking people to screen their array. So that, and you kind of say, well, what do you mean by screening? Well, it's hard to define what screening might be, but most people would understand that screening means it shouldn't look like it's in everybody's face, or you're seeing the butt end of a solar array from the road. You should see something that looks a little bit softer. Yeah, we stayed with the word reasonable. Largely because we don't really have the ability. Unfortunately, or fortunately, as a planning board, we don't have site plan authority. And so we don't review anybody's ability to properly screen, even if it were something that is in an ordinance. That has to be done by the building inspector. And when they do look at it, he's not going to get out his ruler and figure out what it is for how high are your bushes? He's gonna take a look at it and say, yeah, it meets the requirement. Or, at least the spirit of it, or it doesn't. And I think that's the idea of what something reasonable might be. I'll shut up now, because I've already talked too much. Anybody else on screen, Zoom guys? Comments? All right, they're shaking their heads. No, they're not saying anything, they're shaking their heads. No, so now, public, please, if you could, I will recognize you. You need to identify who you are and excuse me.
I just want to add one thing to that reasonable thing, just because that seems to come up most often in the discussion we've had. Yes, if you're looking at a marginal situation, you can have different opinions, and it can be difficult sometimes to say, yes, that's reasonable, or no, that's not reasonable. But where the situation is egregious, and we've seen examples of that, then you don't have a problem. And by having that statute there, it lets you act when it's a real problem. Even if you have some difficulty when it's not quite as big a problem, it lets you tackle the big problems.
Close is good. I mean, this really horseshoes when we're talking this.
My name's Andrew Tullis. I live off Switchback. And
There you go.
You need say no more.
no, I actually just have a couple questions on.
Please.
You defined commercial in a particular way. And what I'm curious about is, say you have someplace like Thompson House that wants to put it on their roof, like Pringles did, as an example. Do you consider that commercial? Because it's not being sold to other people, it would be what their use. And I'm just, so understanding what you mean by commercial, I think needs a better definition.
We actually have no definition of commercial, and the intention there is that there is no ability to do a commercial installation in the zoning ordinance.
We still have the accessory.
It has to be accessory. An accessory means that it has to be used by the property. And therefore, if a commercial property uses it, it's still accessory to the commercial property, as opposed to a resident having an accessory to a resident property. It's an accessory use. It's not a commercial use. Commercial use really by definition would be, and we don't allow it in the ordinance, we don't even refer to it. But that would be where you set something with the intention of selling it to the grid. And we
So I understand that. That's good.
we're basically saying,
So in the example of somebody saying after the fact, because now it's built, saying, yeah, that doesn't really meet the screening. Is there a fine, or how are you penalizing somebody for not going with the spirit of the ordinance?
that's a great question. We don't really have the ability to police it, if you will. And a good example is the one that perhaps is nearby you. And that is that the intention, we've talked to the building inspector, and the intention is that in the spring, some screening will probably occur. It might not meet the requirement immediately because it's trying to be plants.
Right.
But eventually they'll grow to appropriate heights, and eventually they'll disappear.
And that would come before the board of selectmen. And the building inspector. And, we have lots of laws, site clearing, construction, et cetera. I don't know exactly how they handle an infraction, especially if the person that is responsible is not taking care of it. But I don't think we have a set fee for every single ordinance.
No, but I know.
So you must have
Most
someone.
places do have fines if you miss certain building ordinances. so-
Right, but
There really should be in this case.
right, but
I mean, if you live in Jackson, one of the reasons you live here is because of the beauty of it.
Right.
And that is just an outrageous. You talked about the word egregious.
Yeah.
That's the definition of egregious.
But the question is, if someone does that,
Yeah.
then what happens?
Yeah, I know.
And, for example, someone, constructs a house over the 30 to 35 foot height limit. What happens at that point now that it's constructed? And I don't know, but I assume that they have some way of handling that situation, and we don't have a fee set up for every single. I know, sometimes you do set up fees for particular things, but I know that we can handle infractions without necessarily having a specific fee attached to that particular ordinance.
One of the crazy things about what we do here is that, in Jackson, the planning board creates the zoning ordinance, but we have absolutely no authorization to enforce any of our zoning ordinance. That is entirely the Board of Selectmen's responsibility, and whatever agency they use, including employees, building inspector, town engineer, fire chief, whomever they have, police chief, if necessary.
I'm a big fan of the stick.
Yeah, so we try, the idea of this is to try to establish some basis so that right now there is nothing for that. There's absolutely nothing for that. So by putting this here, at least they have some kind of stick to look at it and say, hey, the ordinance says you need to do this, but you need to do this.
Bill,
Yeah.
Bill, can I interject?
Yes, please, Sarah.
If you go to the very back of the zoning ordinance, the last section on administration and enforcement, there is a catch-all for this particular type of situation where it says, if any violation of this ordinance occurs, and this would be the whole ordinance, not just a piece of it, the Board of Selectmen shall institute in the name of the town of Jackson any appropriate action, injunction, or other proceeding to prevent, restrain, correct, or abate such violation. A violation of this ordinance shall be punished by a fine of not more than the maximum set by state law, and each day that such violation continues to be deemed a separate offense. So that's kind of a, it's a catch-all for everything. So
Well,
as you say, if it's a building ordinance infraction, then you would go to the building inspector, et cetera, et cetera.
I feel a lot better about that.
16.3 if you want. Covers.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Sure, yeah, I have a few questions. My name is Kira Solancy, and I'm a full-time resident here in Jackson. I have solar panels on my roof. Very energy efficient home, and to the point that our solar panels provide all of our electricity, heat, hot water. They also power one of our cars. And yeah, and over the course of the year, we it averages out, it's different summer and winter, but we produce more electricity than we use in the house, and that's how we can use it toward the car. And we're grid tied, so that works for our system. And I read the first draft of the ordinance, or the one that was posted a month or two ago, and I read the draft that is currently on the website, which I think might have been missing a piece that somebody's already referred to. So I could be missing part of that. So I have a few questions about it. And one question, the draft that was on the website that I was looking at didn't mention the 150% aspect of sizing for a solar energy system. And a couple of questions I have with that, does that 150% take into account vehicles or potential future vehicles you may buy in addition to powering your home?
The intent, and it is there, and you can point to it where it might be.
17.2.8. It's right under the definitions. So it's on the front page.
Oh, maybe I missed it.
Let's get that one clear first.
Okay. So that is, so the primary use would include vehicles and future vehicles you may buy?
On the 50% does allow some expansion of, your use in a.
I'm thinking, I mean, just thinking of my house alone, like if we had 2 electric vehicles, our house is so energy efficient and. We could use our electric vehicles to commute really far. It's possible at 150%.
Let me ask you, because you have a house, that it's an excellent example probably of what we're looking at. Do you, throughout the year, by the end of the year, have you sold more to the electric company than you use?
No, because we power one of our cars with it.
Okay.
Yeah,
And is that a possibility? Can you get cash back if you perpetually use less than you?
I'm not sure if the system is set up that way right now.
But this-
We get credits that we can, carry over from year to year. The first couple
Right,
of
but
years.
perpetually you're
Yeah,
generating more.
We didn't have.
What do you
a
do with those credits?
remove those credits for a few years, and then we bought the electric vehicle, and then that drew down our credit completely, and now we pay the NHEC.
But you're sort of it's an interesting situation because you don't have much electric use. In terms of, so when we calculate, and. Well, I guess you do, it would depend if you had like a heat pump or something, whether you didn't have much electric use to establish. We could have a situation where someone doesn't use a lot of electricity because they heat their home in some other way.
Fossil fuel.
And so they don't have a lot, my electric bill is well, it used to be $100 a month. And so that, 150.
Once upon a time.
Right, so 150% of that probably doesn't get me much. If I then buy 3 electric cars, because I did, so.
But if it was 150% of your usage,
Yeah.
because that's what the calculation.
Right, but if I don't
is.
use
Usage, it's not.
Right, but if I
So
don't
it's
use,
not usage.
right, currently, if I'm not heating my home, by electric, then, my electric bill is a small bill, and so I
So I
don't
thought there
have
was- yeah,
any
'cause I thought the way Dick
usage.
explained it was like a house of this size, through the calculations would use this much
Like a
electricity.
potential
But
use.
let's use your example. It's an excellent example, and that's why I asked the question. You're saying your usage is just about equal to what you actually produce on average over the year. We'll take that times 50%, and that's the amount that you could actually have available to you for an installation. That would be how we would maximize the size.
If we wanted to power 2 vehicles, let's say, it's possible that 150% of what somebody would calculate for our house would still not be adequate.
No, the
And-
usage of your vehicle goes into before you calculate the 150.
Right.
So you're good that way.
And if you bought another vehicle, couldn't you just recalculate?
And if you bought,
Yeah, I mentioned vehicle.
I mean, if you bought more, I mean, you say you did, if you didn't have one, you did this now, you have one that's gonna, and now all of a sudden. You have, kids who get 16 and they want 3 cars, no. Okay, and your solar array at that point is not gonna be sufficient, you say, I got 3 more cars. You'd go back and say, I need to put more solar panels out, and I can put new solar panels out that are 3 times as efficient as the ones I purchased 2 years ago. Take that new number and times 150, and that's your limit.
Yeah, I mean, if it's the projected future use of
Yeah.
home, your
Home
dwelling
plus
site property and your
Home,
vehicles,
home plus auxiliary.
yeah.
You add that plus auxiliary before you calculate the 150. I think that's,
And if it's like projected use, say for 20 years, like that's the warranty we have, or that's the expected lifespan or something, so you wouldn't want to be like, well, in 5 more years, we'll just add more panels. That's not the way.
Which is why we're doing 1.5.
Yeah,
And again, when we say primary use, we don't define it as a house.
yeah, okay, great.
Primary
So
use,
this,
right? I mean, we don't. Primary use,
vehicle,
your
whatever,
use, your use.
whatever use is. Yeah, okay.
Thanks
great.
for writing the checks, you use it.
Yeah, okay, I think that clarifies that piece for me, is that, okay.
We've had multiple questions.
I do. That was about,
Thank you for asking, by the way.
oh, you're welcome. Emergency access on the roof. I was a little confused about the piece, like this is section 17.4.2. And it starts out by saying that roof mounted systems will comply with applicable state and local fire codes to ensure emergency access to the roof, provide pathways, specific areas of the roof, provide areas for smoke ventilation, and provide emergency egress from the roof. And I was unsure why it didn't just stop after local fire codes, so I couldn't tell. Which would, then it would be roof mounted solar energy systems shall comply with applicable state and local fire codes, period.
We did that at the, because Kevin Bennett asked us to.
Okay.
The building
Building.
A
inspector.
building inspector, and who manages the building codes. I don't think it's any different than that. But it specifies more detailed application so that when somebody asks, he can look and say, see.
So maybe the building, maybe the state and local fire codes, their focus is those 4 things perhaps, and he's just.
And if they
including
don't
sections that-
now, they maybe should. We did pass this by our fire chief, and we did pass it by our building inspector, and they preferred the wording that was there.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the reason why I was concerned or by this is that to me, it sounds like it could be required that instead of, having solar panels kind of covering your south facing roof, it mentions pathways and egress through the roof, like I'll use my own house as an example, our whole south facing roof is covered with panels.
Yeah.
There's no pathway that you can walk between them. There's no egress through our metal roof. If we had to arrange it that way, and again, ours is already built, so it's kind of a moot point for us personally, but if a neighbor, if a neighbor had to set it up that way, then that would be, they wouldn't be able to put up as much of as many solar panels, that would affect.
I'll have to admit, I don't know the answer.
But she said that the solar panels are on the south side, so
Yeah.
they still have access on the other side, and it's the ventilation, because sometimes the
Yeah.
fire department has to get up if there's a fire.
But they have one of those
So-
modern buildings that only has a roof that goes south facing, and it goes sheer on the other side. You probably would need to put the paths in order to be able for a fire person to break through the roof surface in order to get down into.
Yeah, and actually, that was one of my examples I was thinking of. I didn't know if this would, if I have it's just a simple pitched roof, south facing side, covered with panels, north facing side, nothing. So I didn't know if this type of thing, if that is what is sort of the idea behind it, or if you had a roof that was just one pitch and you wanted to cover it with solar panels, would you be, limited? And that could be.
And I think the answer would be yes.
Okay, and if that's the case, maybe there should be more specificity about what is meant by, pathways and other. things like
Again,
that.
that is in the building codes, so we prefer not to add specificity. Like, to your point, if it's in fire codes and it's in the fire code, why are you saying it? So
Yeah.
you kind of confusing me. You said, I don't want this specificity if it's in the fire code, but you want it if it's
Well,
in the
it's,
building codes. All right.
so I'm saying
I'm
if
confused.
what you're looking for is what's already in the state and local fire codes, then I don't know why there's language after it that's talking about other.
Sarah,
other
do
features.
you have any more information on that than I'm pretending to know the answer?
After our listening session, one of the members of the fire department came up and spoke with me about it, and I then gave him the language that we put in as far as that 1742, and also the general regulations that you have to and adhere to all of the here we go, comply with all current building, electric, fire, and other safety codes, state and federal laws and regulations, et cetera, et cetera. So, and he said that having that language in covers you. And so if there's a specific item that's in one of those codes, the building inspector would know about that and would make sure that before, you know, when he's doing the inspection of the application, because you're supposed to include a drawing of your system as to where it's going to be, and how much. That at that point, before the system was even put in, he would probably weigh in on the design of it to make sure that it does follow code.
And not to be a sticker on terminology, but when you said it's egress from roof, not through roof. So you don't need to go through your roof. From your roof. Just making sure.
I was getting through my metal roof anyway.
Right, no, but I thought you had said
Yeah.
it required you to have egress through your roof,
Mhm.
and you don't, they require it from your roof, so that could be off to the side of your house, or
Yeah.
somehow other way you access your roof
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah, okay.
That has to be done.
Yeah, and I guess it would probably just make sense to me more, and I'm not here for wordsmithing.
No,
like,
no,
But if it was something like applicable state and local fire codes, such as to ensure blah, 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 then that would suggest to me that these are features of the state and local fire codes that are part of this. Otherwise, when I read it as
No, I
state
hear-
and local fire codes and these other things.
Yeah, I hear you,
So-
and I can't say that I'm 100% sure. I think, again, we tried to accommodate our local staff that's going to ensure that the installation is done correctly, and they requested that.
Yeah, okay, I understand that.
So, yeah, okay, like, they're gonna work with it. And sometimes it's easier to have something in the ordinance that you can reference, instead of assuming that somebody's gonna know some federal law or something. I just, you know, have some substance. And if we did like in here, we get 10 other people going, what are you doing putting a like in there? So,
No, such as.
yeah. We avoid that.
And I do have one more question. I don't know.
I'm done.
if anybody else does. I know it's right at this point. You're not gonna like this one.
Oh, good.
Oh, good, I'll like it.
Yeah. So it's about the screening and fencing. So I am concerned about that, and I think.
You don't need to screen your rooftop.
No, I mean, I'm gonna possibly do it. But I'm concerned about that, and again, I already have my solar panels, like, I'm just thinking of other people in town who want to set up a solar energy system. So and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but to me, the screening and fencing is just aesthetics, like not liking the way that a ground mount solar energy system looks.
Mhm.
But the ordinance is about like health and public safety.
No,
And-
that's not correct.
No,
No,
okay,
the ordinance, if you read the top
yeah, I read it.
part of the
but-
line, it doesn't just say public safety, it says to maintain community standards. And community standard here is to be aesthetically pleasing areas. We don't want, you know,
And are you
Yeah, well, I
concerned?
think I don't consider it to be unpleasing aesthetically. You know, I see that as.
What don't you consider to be?
Would you care
unpleasant?
to comment about?
What's the definition of unpleasant?
I mean, I've seen several ground mounted solar energy systems. I don't know the one that you're talking about.
Well, drive up Switchback Road,
But
100 feet.
I've seen several of them in other locations. I personally don't find them to be unattractive. What I do find unattractive is looking at people's propane tanks. all, you know, like seeing that, like advertising their,
You took that.
you know, propane company and, you know, I'm not saying we should fence or screen those, but I don't see why we'd be fencing or screening.
That's our-
It's the size.
Well, and,
But that's, and
right, but partly it's just a sheer size issue, you know, a propane tank. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but a propane tank is a very small thing compared to the size of a solar array.
And I do, as much as I.
maybe this one's bigger than what I'm used to seeing.
It's pretty big and it's very
Yeah.
close to the road.
Yeah.
So you really can't miss it. And as much as I find it aesthetically unpleasing, I do think just by saying aesthetically, it's very subjective.
Mhm.
All right, so. You know,
And that's why we're not addressing the aesthetics of the solar array itself. We're just saying that it should be, you know, reasonably screened.
Right. And I mean. As much as I don't like how it looks, I love the fact that there's solar panels there,
Yeah.
honestly. So I don't like how it looks, but I love the fact that it's there. So I'm kind of torn personally.
Yeah. And I think of it partly as a financial burden, like if you're spending all this money on solar to then, you know, spend money creating screening and fencing, that's gonna add to it. So, yeah, I know you've talked about it and there's something on switchback that's bothering everybody, but.
And as Bill has said, it said, you know, this is not set in stone, you know. If you feel that you can't put up the array that you want because of, you know, that particular part of the ordinance, you can certainly go before the ZBA and perhaps get an appeal. But if we see that happening, the bottom line is we all want to encourage solar development. You know, that really, none of us here, I think, want to discourage it in general. We just want to encourage it in a way that everybody's going to accept it.
Yeah.
And so if we find that people are unable to do solar development because of something like that, I think we'll certainly readdress it. But it'd be easier to do it that way than to have installations go up that really cause people to get upset about it.
Yeah.
Then trying
Try to
to
roll it back.
manage the
It sounds
situation
like this
becomes,
maybe a reaction.
right,
really,
becomes a
to
lot more
something that-
difficult, so.
And I will say, if it was in a different direction,
Mhm.
if the solar panels on switchback had to be faced the other way towards the street, there's no way you could screen it.
Right, yeah.
All right, so that's one that you can screen because it's the back of.
Right, but that's probably the more unattractive part of a solar
Right.
panel anyhow, is the back end of it.
Right.
Opposed to-
So if it happened to be facing the other way, it would be less than.
That's right, that's right.
And it could be a burden, I think, if somebody had a small, like I have an acre or 0.98 acres, that's the size of our lot. And if we were to have a ground mount solar array, there's really only one spot we can put it. Somebody that has 5 acres, let's say, they may have a little more leeway. But I'm thinking of somebody who has, a small property, they're saving up their money to buy their solar energy system. Maybe they don't mind how it looks. They like how it looks. They think it looks cool. So I'm still concerned about that piece. I definitely understand where folks are coming from with it, but I just wanted to share that concern about the aesthetic part, and also that it would be could be a financial burden to people to buy what they might need for fencing and screening.
And fencing, I think, really only be required, and fencing really would only probably play in on a community installation. Where
And
the
screening, the idea is that that's foliage, kind of like shrubbery or
Shrubs,
something.
yeah.
Or propane tanks, you know.
Yeah. This one, American.
Put a fence around them.
I hid mine behind the garage.
And I'm not looking to screen propane, it's just, use that, that just pops out as.
We would also like the zoning ordinance to pass and be voted in, and I think if we didn't have the screening provision in, I'm not sure it would pass.
That's interesting, because I was thinking if they keep it in, I won't vote
No,
for it.
I
And I'm not saying that, you know, that's just a thought I had.
It's on
before I
record.
came. Yeah, that's interesting to hear that, that was kind of a big push, like a big
yes, it's,
draw. Yeah.
we listened to everybody and the input we received is screening is important.
Yeah. Wow.
So well, we have spectrum of opinion. Even
As-
among us.
As much as I like the screening part of it, that would not stop me from voting. I mean, I'm very pro solar, so,
So are we.
I mean, meaning the screening, if it wasn't in there, I would still be for it. I just.
Yeah.
And I walk up and down Switchback twice a day, so.
And to offset your perspective, we had folks who said, well, it's not enough to have reason for screening, you better put very specific requirements about how tall and how much and how high and what percentage of screening is going to be available, because I don't want to look at it and see it. So you're gonna specify if it's 68%. Because that's the minimum required in order for it to appear to be screened from the road. I want that in there.
Yeah, interesting.
Is the screening part of the design plan that has to be signed off?
Yes.
Yes.
So we picked reasonable. Because it's,
Yeah.
and you know, if it's on the side of your lot and you can't see it from the road. Your screening is,
Nobody can see it.
Mhm.
And those, I know the people with that solar, and they would have done something whether they had to or not, because they're that type of people. They like to have everything look nice.
yeah, we're picking on them and they're
I
gonna do
know.
something and they're gonna be fine and it's.
That is
it will be
hard.
fine.
Oh, they-
That is really hard.
But we were, I mean, we're using them as an example. It's not.
Yeah, when the
It's
entire.
an ugly bought end of the.
It was a bad decision.
Well, I think it's because it was done late in the year, and they didn't have time to do anything about
They
it.
couldn't,
Yeah.
they couldn't get screened. That's them.
But yeah, they would have done something whether they had to or not.
But not everyone feels that way, so.
Yeah, well, I wish you had screened houses on the mountain too, but
Yeah.
I used to see one at night. Now I see several.
Yeah,
I don't
at
like
least
it.
several, yeah.
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 And that was just a year ago. I saw one.
Well, we didn't pass that ordinance.
I know.
Screening and not.
That's why I like to put 5 acres of solar panels in my backyard.
Just wait till 300,000 satellites up in the sky.
All right, so, were there any technical changes that anybody wishes to ensure? I have issue with one sentence. In the whole thing, and that's about it. And
I don't have any issues with the sentences.
any. If I can. And Sarah, I'm going to identify, it's 17.1,
Okay,
and it's the last sentence. And the last sentence where it says, or community scale solar energy systems,
okay,
and because Scott, 2 years from now, is going to ask the question. Does that mean that, and have solar land coverage, community scale solar energy systems that are accessory uses and have solar land coverage of no more than 1 acre are permitted? The way it can be read possibly is that the 1 acre limit is only restricted to community scale solar energy systems, or does it apply to
Not to me.
both, any ground mounted, whether it's community scale or not?
you're to have a ground mounted system that is not community scale. In other words, it's just with one resident or business. To have a solar land coverage of more than 1 acre, I think with some of the calculations that I think Scott did, is that you would have to have a tremendous amount of electric demand
Black Mountain area.
to have that fit for 100 for 50% of the of what your land of your usage is.
Black Mountain ski area.
And to install that size of a system is going to be very expensive.
Black Mountain ski area. Here's an excellent example. They will use more, they will have more than an acre installation to get their level of electric use in order to accommodate. It's just simply, that's it costs a lot of money to run.
Right, but I can't imagine with climate change.
Not that they would do it, but
But if you're talking about a ski area here, they would never realize that investment.
Again, it is, so what we're saying is we would allow that organization to install something more than 1 acre.
No.
Yes, that's what it says here right now.
All right, so how are you going to change it?
I don't know. Make it 2 sentences or apply it to both situations.
All right.
It's a minor point, but it's the same construction that we have in the elderly housing.
Right. Okay.
I can read it 2 ways, and I don't want to have to be able to read it the wrong way. I think it's a
Well,
minor.
you could put that, the land coverage, solar land coverage of no more than 1 acre, you could have that as a separate sentence. And then it would apply to all of them.
Yes,
Can I ask?
Do that.
Of panels on Black Mountain? Wouldn't the screening issue wipe out that as a concern? No, I'm asking, I'm not.
Well, I think there's some things you can't screen. It's just like when you're on the mountain, you're looking down at a field and that field has solar panels. You can't screen that from the mountain any more than on the mountain. You can screen it from down below.
That's a reasonable. Or,
we end up having issues. Sometimes because we write something one way and then we read it differently at a different time. And we did this with elderly housing just recently, and I'm picking on Scott because Scott's the guy who read it the other way. And he said, well, that's the way it reads to me. And he was right. He could read it one way, I could read it another way, and both of us were right. Even though I think he's wrong. But he was right, that, wrongly right, but he was right.
rightly wrong.
One of those two, yeah. I just want to avoid that. So if we could just make a slight change there, that would be wonderful, and then I'd be really happy with everything else.
Yeah.
Okay. It's minor.
Do that.
Okay,
Minor,
great.
yeah. But if it clears it up, that's fine.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, what do we have to do technically now? Do we have to agree that we're going to vote on this and then send it to our second?
If we don't make any substantive changes, we don't have to have another public hearing.
Ooh, that's not a substantive change.
I vote on that.
Well, that's just a clarification.
Okay. All right, so I think we get to vote then. With one minor clarification, do I hear a motion to approve?
My motion.
Second.
I have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all voting members have said aye. Do we have to recommend this, or how does that work, Sarah? Do you know?
Yeah, I think the way it goes on the warrant is that it is, the planning board approves of it by a vote of, what, 7-0?
Well, no, we can't be 7 because we don't have, John's not here. So we can only be 6. 6-0.
Right.
Can we get his vote in absentia? I don't,
Do we need to vote?
No.
Okay. No, I can work with Julie to get the warrant like we did for the short-term rental wording for the. Because that's the next step, right? Once that- Getting this on the agenda. Like we did the short-term rental last year. The vote. To get it ready for the vote.
I think you still have work to do.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I think the board is done.
yes, that is correct.
So can I ask if you had somebody that wasn't here, why didn't you have 2 alternates?
To answer your question, it's a very technical one, and that is that the selectman's representative can only be allowed to be represented by an alternate of the select board. And the only person who's qualified to do that is someone who's appointed as an alternate by the select board, who is a select person, who's not the select board member who's supposed to be here. And they have not appointed an alternate, so if the select board member is not here, there is no representative for that position, and we cannot use an alternate for our regular members for that vote. So the maximum we can have if he's not here.
Sorry, I asked.
6-2. No, it's important to know these things, and you know, because we were trying to get Dick Bennett to be their alternate, and we went through a whole rigmarole around it to find out, no, he's got to be a select board member to be an alternate for the select board.
Now you know.
Now you don't ask questions you don't want answers to, but you know, if we know the answers, we'll give them.
Tell us that reporter's name, now you know the rest of the story.
Even the one you didn't want to know. Andy, you still there?
So we're going to the next section. of the public hearing.
Well, I think we have to say that this public hearing is now officially,
Isn't the-
public hearing is
Yes.
officially closed. We're going to resume our regular meeting.
Good luck, have fun.
Thank you for your comments and thank you for your questions. We appreciate it. And hopefully we didn't expose our ignorance too much.
No, this is really interesting for me. I appreciate it.
Just right.
This is the body line of public hearing?
Yes, but it's another public hearing.
Oh, it's a second.
Yes, now we're gonna open up our second public hearing.
Little map. Andy.
Andy, did you brought updates, right? Okay.
I brought updated plans today, yeah.
Hearing guide.
Thanks.
You don't have to run away, but really excited.
Yeah, even more obscure things. It could be.
Boundary line adjustment. It's really critical stuff.
Thanks.
Yeah, obviously, I don't know.
Good night.
Thanks, guys.
So Andy, what Julie left me is the new one?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
This one we can sign?
Hopefully, yes.
If we
Yeah,
agree.
yep. Right, yeah, yep, so, very minor revision. Which Whenever you're ready, I can explain the revision and or anything else.
You're on.
Okay. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight, and also certainly for having the Zoom option is just, I think we all got zoomed out for a while, but it's really wonderful to have as an option, especially for nights like tonight where, I wasn't looking forward to driving from Shakora to Jackson and back. So I really appreciate it.
It's a tough night, and not only that, one of the things we found, especially for public hearings, a lot of times the property owners.
I'm on.
Chris, are sometimes the property owners, live in New York or Connecticut or Rhode Island or Massachusetts or Maine, and it's not practical for them to come to the thing. And we have been good about maintaining, David's been really good about maintaining the Zoom format for us. So it's a good thing. And I think tonight we don't really have anybody coming to visit with us that might not otherwise be here, but we appreciate you being able to be here and not having to risk your doing that. Also for our members, for Kathy and Chris and Sarah to be here, be a part of this and not have to venture out for whatever reason that's holding them back.
I drove all the way down to Concord and back tonight, and I had to push my car up the hill while driving it. So I wasn't going back out tonight.
That's, yeah.
And if you believe that.
Well, yeah, you got some prime land in Florida to sell me.
Yep, I got some of that too.
Yeah.
He's a realtor. He's a realtor, be careful.
Yeah, I know. I realize. Yeah, as I was saying that, I realized that was.
Well, Bill, I got my side job right now, which is carrying me over.
Good. That's a good thing. Okay, Andy, what's going on here? Talk to us generally about what's going on here so that we can follow. I think it seems to be a swap of equal amounts of acreage in order to accommodate some. It looks like it's the retaining wall maybe is the big to do on it, but
also creating a very awkward.
it's a funny looking plot you guys put together. Go ahead, talk us through, please. Whose household is this? What's going on?
Yep. So you're spot on with all of it. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. The situation that we're trying to remedy predated any of the current owners of these two properties. So they sort of inherited the situation. The Muellers are they're the ones on Graustein, and their land now, or their use of land, encroaches upon Darcy and Radich, who are above them. It was discovered over time, again, after these two parties, purchased their lands. So they didn't have anything to do with it, but it was realized that the Muellers, essentially their backyard, it encroaches upon the Darcy and Radich property with a pretty significant retaining wall. If anyone's been out there, it's not flat land out there. So at some point, someone, built a nice backyard, but they apparently didn't realize that they were building it on their neighbor's land. So what everybody wants to do is to adjust the area that is essentially the Mueller's yard to the Mueller's property. And the hope right off the, the hope initially was to do an equal exchange of land. And we were able to do an equal exchange of land, but unfortunately, it is a goofy looking result. So that's why it looks weird. And some of the reason why it looks so strange is the Muellers they've got their garage and they've got a parking area, and there's a retaining wall off to the west of their house and garage. We wanted to make sure that all remained with the Mueller's property for any number of reasons, not the least of which being if they needed to fix it, or it just makes a lot of sense to keep that with their property as it's being used now. We could have had the swap land come all the way down to Graustein, but what it would have done would be to cut off there's a little well house lot, which if you can see, it's sort of to the,
Yep.
it used to be a separate lot. Now it has been officially merged. It's now part of the Mueller's lot. But it's a well house. It's a well that services neighbors sort of 2 doors down. It's sort of neither here nor there, but what we were hoping to avoid was either trying to create a little new well house lot or putting that well and the well house onto the Darcy and Radich property.
No, the land that the Darcy Family Trust is gaining seems of little value to them relative to their greater property. Why does it need to be a property exchange? Why not just be a cash for the land granted to the Muellers?
So the shortest answer to that is they preferred their first preference was if it could be an equal exchange of land, that is what they preferred.
Well, I mean, personally, it just seems like the larger piece really gains essentially nothing by this. And the smaller piece really loses. I mean, they gain the retaining wall and lawn, but then they lose all this other land that's part of their property and creates this bizarre thing that just is bound to result in something similar down the road, a couple owners later. We're going to run into the same thing because of the property lines being so contorted. I don't know, just it doesn't make sense to me. I think seems like the Mueller should just purchase that extra land and done a boundary line adjustment just for that, and really not even have that little pie piece, just have it just, like a section of that bottom section. But yeah, that just seems like an odd way to go about it.
So, I'm sorry.
Andy, I was going to say, my guess is that you probably suggested that.
Yes.
And what happened?
So I should say, I assumed that it would just be we make a nice clean cut because the land there from Darcy Radich, where their house is and everything, it's a big, beautiful piece of land there. And then it drops down and there's a brook there. So there's a distinct separation between sort of the two parts of their property. So to me, initially looking at it, I said, well, I'll just draw a straight line across there. And that's simple and it keeps everything, it just looks nicer.
And then what happened?
Then the people who actually own the land said, hey, if we can do an equal exchange of land, please do that. And the goofy land that the Muellers are losing is of no use to anybody from any sort of development potential use. If anyone, I don't want to assume that everyone's been there, but if anyone has been by the property there, from Graustein up to where the Mueller's house is, it's steep, rocky. You know, it's Jackson land that isn't really of use to anybody. So it's not a significant loss to the Muellers as far as that they can't do anything with it. They wouldn't want to do anything with it. So they're okay losing it if it makes everybody happy in the sense that it's equal, not just, you know, square footage to square footage. So that's what we were trying to do, because that's what the landowners wanted.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other perspective is that the part that they're gaining, and I hear Scott's comment, but you know, the part that they're gaining is around the house. It's the part they're actually using, and ends up being more functional, as you say, if it's.
Oh, I can see why the Muellers want to gain that.
But yeah,
No,
They're trading off a piece that they, you know,
right, it's just,
no big deal to something that's.
No,
part of what they.
I'm just saying that the Darcy Radis, they're not gaining anything.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, it might be an equal land area, but it's certainly not equal land value in terms of the swap. I mean, it's the swap just, and again, it's contorted lines like these that I think are gonna lead to something going on somebody else's property down the road, because, you know, it's so difficult to figure out, you know, 25 years from now, or 50 years from now, trying to figure out exactly where this boundary line runs is going to be very difficult. And so that's when people end up putting stuff on other people's lands. We had a very contorted situation a few months ago, and it just.
Yeah, but and if I'm hearing you correctly, though, the characterization of that property that is being let go by the Muellers is something that it's not going to be like another septic field, or it's not a place they want to put a solar array.
Oh, maybe.
Or, you know.
No, the place to put the solar array would be in the land that they're gaining.
Yeah.
But that's their back. But yeah.
I'm trying to listen to both sides of how this might work, and
I just don't see any value of that piece to anybody, and so why even mess with it? Basically what it comes down to. But it's, yeah, it's their land. We can't stand.
Excuse me, but if they agreed on this, and it appears that they have, who cares? Is it our?
Scott cares.
Well, only all of us 25 years from now or 50 years from now, when something has gone on because of these weird boundary lines. I mean, it just.
Scott, if you're on this board in 50 years, yeah.
For the length of time I've already been on it.
More power to you, then.
It's just, I just think stuff like this in general, maybe this one in particular, because.
Never remember this.
Well,
25 years from now. Oh, I was at that discussion.
Yeah,
I
you're so right.
just think stuff like this in general leads to problems now.
Well,
This is what they're doing. The Darcy's, right?
Yes.
But this wasn't of use to them before anyway,
Right.
because it was being used by the. Anyway, when it comes to a boundary line adjustment, our requirement is to look at it and determine if the drawing was drawn correctly and meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance. And I believe it does. Do we end up having a checklist for this?
We have one.
Can we go through the checklist, please?
I'm waiting for everybody to say that. Right? No more questions.
Any more conversation, any questions, any further questions? We're gonna go through the checklist now that we've had the conversations.
Okay, so application signed by owner, yes, it was, I saw that. Butters list.
You got your question answered that you were asking? You started out, was that the Darcy household or?
Oh, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where this is, because I know where Darcy's house is. It's Sutton's old house, I assume. But,
Yeah, but this is Darcy's house up here.
okay,
And Neal's house.
Yeah, that's way up here.
Your house is way up
It's
here.
way up here.
Awesome.
This is Stem Turn Hill Road here, and this is their house here.
Okay,
So this is way,
yeah.
way.
And this is all, open, yeah, but that's what they're getting.
Yeah. Anyway, okay,
Okay,
sorry.
so we have the things in front of you, Scott, you have it in front of you. Title box identifying title for proposed lot adjustment plot showing town and plan. book.
Somewhere.
Yes,
Yes, okay. E911 address for proposed lot if available.
Just be the same.
It's the same, right? An ownership chart including printed names for adjustment and after adjustment. Yeah,
Yes.
I see that. Yes. Abutters name and tax map and lot numbers matching separate abutters list. Yes. Name of zoning district where lots will be adjusted are located. Looking at the map, but
yes,
yes, okay. Minimum zoning frontage requirement,
yes,
yes. Plot scale 1 inch equals 100 feet or better,
yes,
yes. North arrow.
Yeah.
Location map clearly showing centered site location and adjacent named roads.
yes,
Name, license number, address and seal and signature of a surveyor.
Yeah.
Surveyor certificate statement, I certify that.
yes.
Boundary survey including bearings and distance. of
Did he
all
sign it
lines.
though?
I don't see a signature on the bottom.
Are you gonna sign that thing?
Do they all need to be signed?
His-
Andy, you need to sign the darn thing.
I thought I signed them all.
Signed there.
You signed the seal.
You signed the seal,
Sign the
but not the certification.
Are you official?
Oh. I signed, there's another, I think there's 3 spots.
Yeah,
So that's my, I apologize for that.
Okay,
all right, we'll kind of put that aside at the moment and we'll take care of that, but that's something that needs to be attended to.
Yes, absolutely. That was just an oversight this morning when I
send them back up here.
did these. So
You're
I
gonna
apologize.
have to retrieve these things anyway, right?
We're gonna have to what?
You have to retrieve these things anyway, right?
You have to come and get it.
I'll have to come, yes, I'll have to come anyway. I have to come up with a Mylar as well.
Ah, okay.
If, yeah, at whatever point you hopefully approve.
Okay, all right,
So I have to come back anyway.
we'll get, yeah, okay, you physically need to be here at some point to take care of signatures, yes,
Yes.
okay,
Boundary survey, including bearings and distance of all lot lines, both current and proposed, showing entire parcel being adjusted with current lot numbering. Okay. All zoning ordinance setback lines, building setback and year-round streams. Okay. Soil minimum lot size chart demonstrating that each proposed lot meets zoning minimum lot size based on section 6 of the zoning requirements.
There's a note,
it's there, they just got a note.
there's a note at the top.
Butters names, I saw that, butters names are on there. Existing buildings and other human-made objects remaining, that's on there, yes.
Approximately,
Deed restrictions, if any, copy of deed statement indicating no knowledge of deed, yeah.
Yep.
I read that. Location of existing and proposed water supplies, water wells within 200 feet of involved lots.
yes,
Location of existing and proposed sewers and septic systems within 200 feet of the involved lots.
not a,
Location names of existing streets.
yep,
floodplain land if applicable, do we have floodplain land here?
Yeah. Not applicable.
That's it.
All right, so, to approve this application, we're missing then a couple of requirements. One is a signature and the other is a Mylar. So in order to, have a vote, I would like to, if we can, a vote to approve pending receipt of a signed Mylar and copies for execution. And we'll have to coordinate signatures on our end.
So moved.
I hear a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
A second.
I have a
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You are approved, then.
Thank you all very much for your time and attention and
Yeah, we need the Mylar, we need your signatures, and we'll be good.
great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'll be up there.
Good.
Thank you. Have a great night, everybody. Travel safely.
Thank you, you too.
Okay, whole business, we gotta finalize that language for section 10. We agree that we're gonna do that at this meeting.
Oh, man.
Do we have a clerk from info?
That section. Number. The elderly. That section. What's the word we want to change? We decided it was housekeeping, thing. So what do we want it to say?
Sarah, what did we agree? We agreed to make it 2 sentences?
This is section 10.
Yeah, this is the 10.2.2.
I thought we were just going to eliminate that.
Well, we agreed that we weren't going to just eliminate it simply because the elderly housing discussion is also part of, and I've looked at it further, is also part of the federal housing authorities' requirements for subsidization, that you have a certain percent for elderly housing, and you have to have a definition of elderly housing in order to qualify it.
Is it a certain percent or no more than a certain?
It's a certain percent,
We have-
or no, it's yeah.
We have no more.
Yeah,
My guess is that if you were going to put affordable housing into a development, you might feel that housing going to elderly would promote the value of that development over housing going to, people that can't afford it.
mhm,
That are working.
Yeah.
So it would maybe try not, it may be so that people don't load their affordable housing with elderly housing.
yeah.
So,
So we can't cheat and just kind of remove it.
well, I mean, this does allow, this sort of promotes it in that it allows someone to qualify for elderly housing based on just one of the couple being over 60.
Right.
But mostly what we want to do is just make sure that it's the household income that
Right.
qualifies. And so, I mean, could we just say, at least one person of the couple of 60 years of age or older, and the household income qualifies as a level.
I think if we just say that the household.
Yeah.
income- Yep,
That should work.
yep.
Okay.
So just
Can you
remove
repeat that
who
very
by
slowly?
and put household
Could you
instead.
repeat that very slowly into the microphone? I can get that in a minute.
Sarah, can you repeat it very slowly into the microphone so that David can capture?
All right, so you want to change the definition of eligible elderly household to, I'll just read the whole thing. An individual or couple in which the individual or at least one person of the couple is 60 years of age or older, and whose household income qualifies as a low or moderate income household as defined by this section.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. That, Scott, can you read it a funny way?
Well, I just said whose household income sounds a little odd because it's sort of singular to a, you know, multi, sort of where the household income qualifies. I mean, whose might be fine. It just sounds a little.
Well, it applies to both an individual and a couple.
Mhm.
So if it's an individual,
Right, it's
It's,
just we're speaking about a single person. Just, you know, the first part of the sentence, and so, you know, the whose is a single person and household is.
Is who's singular? Why would who's?
It would be WHO''S.
No, who's, WHOSC.
Right, but we're
I
talking
see.
about a single person at the beginning of the sentence. It
and
says,
whose household? No, that the whose would apply to both.
The who's is not singular, it's referring to the household. He's having the same issue that he had last time.
no, it says an individual.
Correct.
Or couple in which the individual. Or at least one person of the couple
Mhm.
is 60 years of age or older and whose,
Household.
right, now, to me, the whose that you'd use in that sentence. Technically would be WHO''S because you're talking about an
No,
individual.
the English language would use whose, WHOSE, which would
No,
apply. to
sorry, right, both, yeah, you're right.
Oh, God. Listen, I really don't want to extend this conversation, but as defined, you said income as defined by this section. I mean, does that relate to any, federal poverty thing or anything like that? Or do we have to
No.
revise this every year?
Chris, the next definition is of low and or moderate household income. And
As defined by who?
50% of the median income justified family size. Carroll County published. And so it's defined.
Okay, all right. That's all I
Defined
want to be
The
clear.
next one,
And I'm okay
low
with
or
it.
moderate income.
All right.
Yeah,
As long as it's tagged to some sort of an index, I'm fine with it, but
Yeah, well, 10.2.3. The definition that follows this, if you have your zoning ordinance opened in front of you on page 15, it's the one down at the bottom.
I don't.
Trust me.
We figured that
Right.
already. We're good here.
Okay, I got the.
We understand your concern, but we're good.
If I have any questions, Sarah, I'll throw it to you first before I put in the minutes. If I have any questions.
Okay,
All right.
Why take that? 3 months.
Do we really have short-term rental?
Yes, 2 of them. 2 of them. Should be going quick. So the first one, let's see. Good. No, the first one is Martha Wheeler, Rita. Now, the tax card and the building permit are okay, 3-bedroom. However, her ad says 4 bedrooms. So I don't know where she's getting the fourth bed.
Using a basement or something.
Probably, but
Okay,
yeah.
so we can accept the application, but we have to notify the
But
select.
here, but she only advertises for 8 people. So advertising meets the standard. But she's advertising 4 bedrooms, so we. should-
So we can still comment. All right, so do I have a motion to accept the application with a comment to the select board of a misstatement of number of bedrooms?
So
Does that mean she'll change the ad?
No, doesn't necessarily, it just means that we, as a planning board, have seen something that doesn't look right. And the select board has the opportunity to either approve the application without making any issue, or they can go back and say, we are not going to approve it until they make a change.
But we cannot, in other words, we have to approve it. We can't.
No, we aren't approving, we are only accepting the
Oh, okay.
application.
Okay.
We are accepting the application and we have the responsibility, if we see something that's not right, to identify in the comments anything that doesn't work. And then they have to make a decision as to, because we went through this with the one earlier where it was really messed up.
Yeah.
We still, and we didn't accept the application, and then it was like, well, what was wrong with the application? The application was fine. It just didn't comply. So we should identify anything we see that is not in compliance, or if we're aware of that. If there's personal knowledge, if, oh gee, they only have 2 bedrooms, I don't know what they're talking about.
And I think this might actually be outside of the short-term rental ordinance anyhow, because we don't specify how many rooms you can advertise. We specify
It would be up to
people.
the select board to decide whether or not they feel that this is sufficiently an issue.
Right, but
But it's not in our zoning
Right,
ordinance.
but
right?
I'm not sure they could deny it based on our short-term rental ordinance, but they might say, well, geez, if they're advertising 4 bedrooms and they're only, supposed to have 3, then maybe the building inspector should go pay them a visit and
Yeah.
see what's going on with that extra bedroom.
Yeah,
Boy, I'm trying to. I don't
It's a
know.
very modern looking house.
It could be, if it's up on a hill, it could be, I've never been in that particular house.
which one is it? Oh, yeah.
I'd like to see it. It's also a new one, so again, both of these are all new. I think the new ones, that's what we're going to do that now. It's the new applications. So
I have a motion to accept, and do I have a second? I have a second.
Yeah, I get that.
All in favor for accepting the application?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Next, please.
next to, this is a simple one. 4-bedroom house, permanent septic and advertised for 4 bedrooms, sleeps 10. So it meets all of the criteria.
That worked pretty well.
This is on Dundee Road, which I found out the other day as a lot of short-term rentals on Dundee Road.
Yeah.
What is it, on the other side or?
176? I don't know what 176 is Dundee Road is.
Get a picture of that. That's just the foundation.
Oh.
It's a cheap right there.
That is good. The pictures on the tax work are really do show foundation.
Oh,
Maybe it's one of those glamping sites.
Actually, it sleeps with 10 guests.
maybe it's just all glass.
Yeah.
It's an invisible house. Okay, but this one meets.
I might have had a service call there, I just couldn't find it.
Okay, motion to accept,
So move.
second,
Yeah, second.
I have motion and a second to accept. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're good.
That's it. I make a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
My
Yeah.
God, I'll second that. I'll second that.
I have a motion to adjourn and a second.
This is my goodbye Trump hat.
Yeah. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
God.
This would be a good job for George Santos.